this world keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more characters and characters are being added as the season starts coming to a close. I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the 6th episode of the Peripheral. Explicitly can't say the title right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence with Hollywood already did it. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 6 of the Peripheral, called F You and Eat Shit. No censors on any type of the title, but it's a kind of a fun way of how we get there and why the title is that as we go on through the episode. Unlike the previous episode that spent the entire time, well, the majority of the time in the present day or in the Flynn timeline, this one spends both its time in the Peripheral. We are in the future for the majority of this episode with a Connor B story kind of going through. Speaking of Connor, we start off with a flashback, and that lets you sort of know whenever you flashback about a particular character, that lets you know that episode is going to be centric to that person. Like Bob was for the previous episode, Connor is for this one, and we get to see, unfortunately, the unfortunate situation how Connor lost his legs. It is in 2028 in Texas at an outpost, and Burton, Connor, and the rest of their team are in hiding, sort of flanking, watching a dog. A dog is sort of hurt, injured in the middle of the desert, in the middle of Texas, and they're kind of watching it. Connor believes it's a hurt dog and we need to go ahead and save it. Burton and the rest of the team feel like it's a trap, but Connor kind of goes on his own and does his own thing, which is sort of par for the course for this episode. But he goes and does his own thing. He gets to the dog, tries to rescue it, and sees that it is a trap. But it's not a sniper as such as Burton and them thought. The dog actually has a bomb in it, and there's no way for him to get away. It explodes, and thus he ends up in the situation that he does. We see this through a night terror, and so he wakes up screaming, and Burton is there to sort of calm him down and relax him. We are then introduced to Mom and Beatrice. Mom, I know, small thing, they play a character on, Mom plays a character on Roseanne. She's Darlene's boss. So it was kind of cool to see them here again in something that's significantly bigger and significantly different. She does more comedy chops there. This one is more of a badassery, who is clearly feared by everybody in the Peripheral. Lev, Wolf, all of them know that when Mom and Beatrice walk into the room, we've got some answers and we can't lie about it. Mom and Beatrice are part of the Metropolitan Police, and they don't take no for an answer. And so Mom speaks in alliteration and analogies and coded, like she uses terms for it. She's very much like the Merovingian in the Matrix, the person who kind of oversees everything, but she's the top boss here. And so they are now on a quest to figure out what exactly happened to why there are popes killing people in this world, and what information has been given out, and sort of close up that loop. We then head to the police department in present day, where we see Tommy discussing with the person who's in charge of all the write-ups and materials and all the evidence that comes in. He's trying to get a little bit more information. She's like, I'm not giving it to him. And then he goes to the bathroom because his nose is like profusely bleeding. We learn later from his wife that he's concussed, but he's not doing anything about it. But in that bathroom, he's met by his boss, the sheriff there, and it is very clear to me that the sheriff is trying to have him stand down. And in that, Tommy kind of puts two and two together and is like, "Oh, crap, you're in on this." He also sees it helps. He catches that, and I don't know if he's aware of it. I am aware of it as an audience member before, like just the way he's quickly trying to send him home, and he gives him like a hold to the scorpion. Like, you got a bunch of fire in here. You got to know when to use that fire. It's clear that at that point he's like, "Hey, you don't know what you're into. Stop. Go take some rest. Let us do what we have to do." But when he gets in that toilet, he sits down, starts humming the "Don't Worry, Be Happy" song. He then sees the shoes that he's wearing, And Tommy puts it together like that's him. Now, what's interesting about that is that I would imagine the sheriff is aware that he was whispering that then. He doesn't know how concussed he is, but it seemed like he also kind of was hedging him and letting him know, like, I am the one who did this to you. Stand down. It can go either way, but it plays that the message is received. But it's not stopping Tommy. He not stopping. Goes to see his wife, and that's when she realizes that he's concussed. And she's like, hey, we can leave here. We don't need to do this. Stand town. Let this be somebody else's problem. Tommy's trying to be that white knight. Like, no, I've been here with the Flynn's this entire time. I need to back them up. I've seen it to this point. Let me see it through. And his wife's like, no, we should leave. Flynn and Wilf, in peripheral mode in the future, are kind of just walking down the street and having a conversation. And they're discussing sort of what she said to Charisse at the end and saying that Charisse said that I have something. Is it possible that Alita, when she touched me, when we first met, stored something in there, which I kind of said in the last episode. She did something. Flynn has something stored somewhere, and she just doesn't know where it's at. Alita somehow did that and put that there. She's just not aware of it yet, and it's now a matter of them trying to find out where it's at. But they're having that combo. In that also, Flynn asks, like, hey, why are the people staying so far away from me in this peripheral? Like, why is that the case? And it's like, it's the health thing. And he kind of nods, he kind of looks to the side, which I believe it is a health thing, but I also think that he can kind of pivot it a little bit and say, hey, no, move your fingers together. This is all sort of a fabrication. And so there aren't really that many people here in the world. It's a very bleak situation. And he's like, what about all these buildings? Is there anything else that's fabricating? He's like, no, the buildings are for the most part there, but if you rub your fingers again, you can sort of see on the other side that a lot of that's fabricated too. It is done so that it does not feel so bleak, that is sort of a moral bonus to kind of help people who are put into this world feel like there is some type of hope as opposed to as bleak as it is. But as a viewer, man, it is bleak as shit. But what Flynn immediately kind of thinks is that if the RI is as comfortable as fabricating this stuff out in the open, what in the world are they doing in secret? So Wilf and Flynn have a date with a fabricator, and they go to see. This is the one that people say that if you want to get something done, this is the person to go see. And in that, they find one that they have to do a little bit of coded messaging to, but they get behind where they need to and start getting some information. They don't let on exactly what it is they want until Flynn mentions that, hey, what if you were to replace a peripheral eye or pult eye with a real human eye? And then all hell breaks loose. And a pretty awesome fight sequence occurs. Chloe Moretz is showing that she's pretty much, while it felt a little stiff in the battle between she and Charisse, this one feels a little bit more loose and a little bit more well thought out and fleshed out, and it's cool to see. It also is interesting that Wilf sort of stands to the back and lets her do her thing. I think it's a twofold. One, he's actually there, and so if he dies, he's dead, whereas the peripheral can kind of be rebuilt or put back in, so he's kind of letting her do a thing. But I also think it's a way for him to sort of see how good she is, see how if we get into a precarious situation, can she get us out of it? So that is kind of what's happening there. She gets the better of them and sort of asks some questions about how tied into this is Alita, and to get them to sort of start looking into how can we use the orbital saga to sort of find her. They're still trying to find that clue to sort of find her. As they're leaving, Wilf does look at Flynn lovingly and it's like, hey, we can't let you go back out there looking like this. We got to clean you up. And he starts wiping some of the blood off. There's a bit of a tender moment in there that Flynn has to shut down because she's very confused. She's like, I just don't know what this is. We get back to the Connor of it all for this episode. Connor, it's a tragic thing, and I said this was going to happen to him once he got the idea of being into the peripherals, that he's not going to want to leave. And I was right. He's not going to want to leave, but it gets further than that. He wants to stay there permanently, and so he is seeking out a way with some of the folks that are at the printing lab that, hey, can you find a way to maybe, if we get an IV for me, you can give me food intravenously and make it so that I can waste on myself and it gets funneled out. Can you set up a situation where I'm in there nonstop and I never have to come out? And for him, he wants to give up the life that he has unfortunately been dealt and live in there, a shell of himself, or not in reality, but live in there for good. And what's crazy is he has not been on the other side of that yet. He doesn't really know what's there. His body has not been made there yet. They are working on it in this episode, putting a little extra care into it than normal, which is kind of a star for me. Like, I'm gonna check that into the back of my mind and see what's going on with that. But it's in the process. And with him not being there yet, he doesn't know what he's jumping into. And that seems to be sort of the issue with the flashback that he has. He kind of went in head first, his heart like bleeding on his chest. He went in to help the dog. Now he's trying to like, I want to make my life better. Be damned of what else is sort of happening. And so later, this eventually gets to Burton, and Burton is kind of like, hey, look, let me think on this a bit. But you choosing to go into that world is you basically taking a slow bullet and dying. Like, you're choosing to take the slow path to death when you are living a life here. And he's like, hey, everybody is taking that slow bullet, if you want to be honest about it. Like, he's kind of like, let me choose how I want to do this. Burton has had future legs printed for him that are supposed to be some of the best things, but Connor wants no parts of that. All he wants to do is get into that hat, get into that peripheral, and just sort of live the life that he thinks is on the other side of that. But he has no clue what he's actually getting into. Now, what we also learn is that Corvo does sort of have his thumb on this entire town in present day, like his entire town. And so the sheriff does take Bob back to Corvo. And so we get a scene where we see Bob held captive by Corvo and his wife with a collar on. And Corvo's pontificating, saying some of the best language things you can possibly say. But he gets into this thing because Bob asks, hey, are you the one who hired me? And they kind of both look at it. Corvo and his wife look at each other and they're like, crap, we didn't do it. Somebody else does. And he's not giving us that information, or he's trying to throw us off the scent. And so what he's saying is like, hey, I have something that's marinating and you're coming in and sort of messing that up. You're mucking it up. So I need to know who hired you, because I was hired by someone. So it's clear that there are two plays in the peripheral that have hired separate entities to go handle the flames. Maybe for different reasons, who knows, but it is not coming from the same place. And he feels like, hey, if you do this, I'm losing my money, and I don't want to lose my money. So I need you to tell me what's going on so I can nip that in the bud, because this is my town, and then I'll take you off the board. This is when we see that there's a shot collar, because Bob's like, I'm not being captive. He tries to attack Corvo, but his wife has the remote in her hand. She can control the collar, and he shocks him, and he can't do anything. Corvo then goes to the sheriff's office to kind of get more information and kind of get some leeway into what these invisible cars were, and like who's doing what, and like his Bob's line of sight and who he really is. And the password for his files is FU and eat shit, thus the title. But while he is there, his wife and Bob are left at home, and it's her duty to sort of get more information out. Corvo feels that she's the best person for that. But Bob's a little smarter than her, and he sees that the huge fish tank's there, and he grabs something, sets up a plan that basically allows the water to come out from the fish tank. And with the electricity, when she grabs for the remote to shock him, she shocks herself too. And so they both pass out. But he's a little bit more trained for all of that. He's also felt it a couple of times, so he's sort of regulated his body for it, and he wakes up. So he's going to be free, and she's not. And Corvo's going to be pissed. But I don't think he's going to be that mad at his wife. Maybe, but he's not going to be like, if it was his nephew that did it, he'd probably be furious and try to kill that dude. There was a moment where Tommy and Burton meet up, and Burton also tells Tommy to stand down. You don't know what you're getting into, and Tommy's like, look, there's invisible cars, the sheriff is definitely in on this, like, I need to help you guys. And he's like, I'm not telling you anything else, I'm doing this for your safety, stop. If you think you've gotten this far, it only gets worse from here. He ain't listening. Tommy is not paying attention. He's running through a brick wall. For whatever reason, he likes to play the hero. And there has to be at least one person who's like, I'm doing this for the sanctity of being good. and that's who Tommy is. The episode ends or comes to a conclusion when Mom and Beatrice show up at Lev and Wilf's and the team in London's house, and you can see the fear of God put into put into them. Lev's like, "Don't make her wait. Let's go get her." And he immediately tells Wilf, "Don't lie to her because everything that she's asking, she already knows the answer to. You just need to be forthcoming." And in this conversation that they have, Mom essentially threatens Wilf and is like, "I'm going to kill you. You are the small fish that is offered up, and you mean nothing to anybody," which feels bad. He's like, in my time, you would mean nothing, and I don't know if it's because of his ethnicity or what. It feels like it's a part of that, but it's like, you're nothing. However, if you give me the larger fish, we can probably let you off the hook. And she's basically saying, I got you dead to rights. I know that you were there. I know you were responsible for killing Daniel. But I need to know why, and I need to know who put you up to this. Lev's not talking, and Wilf's kind of keeping quiet. And she's like, "Okay, cool. When I arrived, I saw that there were 3 peripherals on site. So that means that they did finish, by that point in time, they did finish Connor and Burton's peripherals. And of course, Flynn. So she asks, like, I want them here. And the owners. And that's when it gets a little bit difficult because it's a matter of riling up 3 people. But she's not asking. She's telling that's what we need now. Sooner would be preferred, but now is acceptable. And so it's sort of a beacon call to go call those guys. So after Connor and Burton have their conversation, Burton's like, "Oh crap, well, we just been called in. You're up." So they make it their way to log in, and then Flynn is there as well, and they all logged in. All 3 log in. We don't really get to see the reaction because I believe it's Burton's first time. Period. No, Burton's second time. He's been in there before, but under Flynn, and it's Connor's first time. We don't get to see their reaction to their new bodies or whatnot because the episode ends with Flynn being introduced to Mom, and Mom kind of, "I'm aware of you. You must be the infamous Flynn," and that is where the episode ends. A powerful point, a lot to sort of get through with only 2 episodes left to go, but they have hours to spend, so I think they can kind of get to it. But there are a lot of seeds that are replanting here. There are 2 factions that have put in present day to end the Flynns. And Tommy's now sort of actually, unfortunately, speeding up that process because he's digging in so much. He's making it worse for the Flynns there than probably would be had it just been left alone. And we're getting closer to finding out exactly what Alita has done, but I feel like Alita has put that code or whatever it is that Sharice is looking for into Flynn, and is stored somewhere, and she just doesn't know where. And Mom is fascinating. I love that everybody's afraid of her. I am interested to see the sequence when Mom and Sharice talk, because I feel like both of them have felt like the alphas of the room. And it's going to be interesting to see when 2 alphas are together to see which one of the 2 of them kind of stands the tallest of the 2. And then it's going to be interesting to see how Connor actually feels about this other world. Because the grass is always greener on the other side. He's been wanting to get into that peripheral and lock in and like, hey, I want, it feels real. I want to live in that world. But then seeing that world is bleak and destitute and nothing is as it seems, I feel like he's going to quickly learn that the life that he's currently living might be the better of the 2, and he might need to start appreciating the things that he has there, as opposed to living in this bleak and dark and twisted world that he's trying to abscond upon. A very dense and bleak episode, really good episode. I'm interested to see now with both Bob and Corbel now have to fight off. You hurt my wife, so now we got to fight off. But what's interesting, we don't get Billy Ann or Corbel's nephew at all in this episode. So every time we introduce a new character, we sort of lose a previous one, and it's kind of now trying to balance all of those parts. And I imagine with 2 episodes left, we aren't introducing anybody else. Like, this kind of has to be the palette that we play with in this season because it's starting to get a little overstuffed. But I am still in. I think we're still moving at a pace that is good enough, and I am interested to see now, once we get back, what that interaction is between Mom and Flynn, and how Flynn is even possible or capable of getting out of that. Because it seems like Mom has him dead to rights. What did you guys think about this episode? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcast. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.